Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Sorry for the annoying title, it's just there to make the people who watched yesterday's video
come back to it. You're starting to become a Jedi,
You're a monster.
to come back and watch this one because I want to talk about a few things. Primarily one, and it's the main reason why I'm making this video, because I was misunderstood, my meaning was sort of twisted in yesterday's video. Now the message I wanted to convey was specifically that the prequels, especially episodes 1 and 2, are boring, and sorry for the neighbor's dog if you can hear it. Now some people assumed that I'm trying to say that episode 7 is the best thing ever, or that I'm trying to imply that if a movie is fast-paced and has action, it's not boring, but if a movie is slower paced and has more dialogue, it is boring. Now that couldn't be further away from the truth. I like episode 4 very much, and the first act of it on Tatooine has a lot of slow moments, like the ones with the droids, and has next to no action, yet I like that, I don't think it's boring. So what I mean by boring is more in the sense of not interesting, not exciting, not entertaining, not enjoyable to watch. Not necessarily lacking action, and probably the best example I can give you to that is the video games that I like, and probably most of you know. I love games like Dragon Age Origins, the Mass Effect series, The Witcher 3. In all of these, you spend the better time of your gameplay talking to people, and then talking to other people, and then walking around and looking for other people to talk to, and figuring out how the things you said to the previous people will affect the following conversations, and so on and so forth. So by no means do I suggest that having action means it's not boring, and not having action means it's boring. So let's just throw away that entire premise out of a window. And by the way, Padme is not all that bad. I mean, let's take this window scene for example. I mean, it's easily 10 times as bad as Padme. So you have bounty hunter Jango Fett hired to kill Padme, and then he hires this girl, then she hires this droid, or uses this droid, to drill a hole into Padme's window. And keep in mind that both Jango Fett and this woman are extremely good sharpshooters. So they drill a hole into a window, and what do? Did they drop poisonous insects in there? Come on, you know. But anyway, that was the main thing I wanted to talk about. If you're asking why is that? Why do I think they're boring? Well, I did make a series of videos called The Best and the Worst of the episodes, and in the worst series I kind of explained that. But in essence, I find the writing to be bad, I find the scenes to be very poorly composed. You have characters sitting in front of an artificially generated environment and talking, or standing around and talking, or walking at a slow pace and talking. The camera is not moving, the things the characters are talking are not interesting, not engaging. The acting is relatively bad. Like basically all of these actors have other roles in other movies where they're great, and in this movie they just look awful. And that's probably not the actor's fault, but the direction and the writing.
Remember, Obi-Wan, if the prophecy is true, your apprentice is the only one who can bring the Force back into balance.
There are a lot of things that don't make sense, a lot of things that are meant to be funny are not funny, characters that you can't relate to, overly complex plot at times, which I admire the ingenuity of Palpatine to pull off this whole deception, but it's just not made very interesting. I watched the originals when I was like 10 years old, and I liked them. I watched the prequels when I was 12, and I was just waiting for the lightsaber duels, which are fine. I mean, I like the lightsaber duels, but the things in between pale in comparison. I mean, the duels are all wild and crazy and mobile and everything's like everyone's flying here and there, and then in between they're just sitting and talking and looking at each other, and it's just, the story is not necessarily bad, and what they're trying to do is not bad, but the movies that are made to tell this story are not well made. Anyway, I can go on much longer, you know, go watch these videos if you want, but that was in short. I don't want to make this video way too long. Now, other things that I wanted to touch upon about episode 7. Obviously, I don't think it's perfect, and I do have criticisms for it as well. I'm gonna list a few things quickly. For example, blowing up another Death Star. The fact that Kylo Ren uses Darth Vader as a sort of a symbol of the dark side, symbol of evil if you wish, and not a symbol of redemption, like I think it was supposed to be looked at. Overly crazy guy in this scene. The whole building a map to find Luke Skywalker was a little, better not think too much about it part. And other things. But I want to talk about two things that I disagree with, and there are popular criticisms, and try and explain why, try and sort of appeal to your senses. I'm not going to go and say you're stupid, you're wrong, you shouldn't think that way. It's your right to not like it. I just want to tell you how I feel about them and why you might want to consider them from another perspective. Now, these two things are Rey's overpowered nature and Kylo Ren's character as a whole. You know, many people dislike him. They think, oh, he throws temper tantrums, he's weak, he's this, he's that. Okay, so let's start with Rey. Now, to fully explain what I mean with Rey, we really have to take a step back. Star Wars in the original trilogy is pretty much a different Star Wars from most of what followed the original trilogy, including the prequels and most of the expanded universe. The main difference for me is the attitude towards the Force and the attitude towards lightsabers and lightsaber combat. Now let's compare and disregard the prequels and the originals. And I'm gonna start by saying that I do prefer the original's take on it, although I don't hate the prequel's take on it. I sort of learned to appreciate each for what it is. So in the originals, the Force is basically magic. It is viewed as something mysterious and something philosophical. It is something that is very much on the inside and ties with your emotions and your inner peace, if you will. It has, I guess, some semblance to Buddhism in a way. In the prequels and the rest of the expanded universe, it's much more like a tool, much more measurable, much more quantifiable. And that was probably one of the reasons why many people hate the midichlorians. I personally don't. I mean, I like science and the idea of endosymbiotes, which apparently that is what the midichlorians seem to be, is interesting, and I sort of learned to appreciate both. But it does make for a large difference in the portrayal of the Force between the prequels and the originals. And there's a similar thing going on for the lightsabers. Now look at Obi-Wan and Yoda in the originals and the prequels. Obi-Wan never tells Luke or shows him or the audience in any way that the lightsaber is something very important. It seems like going for his lightsaber is always the last thing he wants to do. Now, the confrontation between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader is widely considered as the worst lightsaber duel, but I actually like it because for the first time we see the light side versus the dark side, and how they are different and how Obi-Wan sacrifices himself. It really is a scene where the crossing of lightsabers is a background of what's important, what they're saying, what they're doing, and so on. It's a confrontation of characters, not a confrontation of swordsmen. Also, he never trains Luke with a lightsaber, like there's no scene where they're fighting with lightsabers, training. In fact, he tells him about the lightsaber more as though the lightsaber is a symbol. And I think at this point when they made the movie, I don't think they intended anyone else but the Jedi to have lightsabers. I mean, Vader had one because he was a Jedi, but the Emperor doesn't seem like he was intended to have a saber at all. And now let's look at Obi-Wan in the prequels. He always has the lightsaber with him, he uses it very often, he keeps advising his student how important the weapon is, how this weapon is his life.
Next time, try not to lose it. Yes, Master. This weapon is your life.
All of the fights are very, very lightsaber focused. And in almost each of them, once you lose your lightsaber, you're pretty much done. In fact, there are dedicated shots of people losing their lightsabers, showing how their lightsaber is flying away, bouncing away from them. Again, signifying how important it is and how you're pretty much screwed if you don't have a lightsaber in hand. Now, let's see how Yoda is different.
I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior. Put that down. Now we... Hey! It's my dinner! Hey, get out of there! No! Hey, you could have broken this. I don't want your help. I want my lamp back. I'm gonna need it to get out of this slimy mud hole.
Mud hole? Slimy? My home this is!
R2, let him have it. R2! I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master. No, I don't even know what I'm doing here. We're wasting our time.
I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience.
You will learn patience.
Much anger in him. Like his father, a Jedi must have the deepest commitment. The most serious mind. A long time have I watched. All his life as he looked away to the future, to the horizon. Never his mind on where he was. What he was doing. adventure. Excitement. A Jedi craves not these things. You are reckless. Will he finish what he begins?
I won't fail you. I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be. A Jedi's strength flows from the Force. But beware of the dark side. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Easily they flow, quick to join you in a fight. If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will, as it did Obi-Wan's apprentice.
Vader, is the dark side stronger?
No. But easier, more seductive.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know when you are calm, at peace, passive. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
But tell me why I can't...
No, there is no why.
No. We'll never get it out now.
So certain are you? Always with you what cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
I can't. It's too big. You want the impossible. I feel cold.
That place is strong. But the dark side of the Force, a domain of evil it is. And you must go.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you. Your weapons. You will not need them.
A ship? A cup. A ship. A speeder.
How feel you?
Cold, sir.
Afraid, are you?
No, sir.
Your thoughts dwell on your mother.
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What has that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
It is obvious that this contest cannot be decided by our knowledge of the Force, but by our skills with a lightsaber.
Now, in case you couldn't tell what was different, let me try and explain my point. So, in the originals, Yoda meets Luke, and without Luke knowing, Yoda puts him through a test of patience, and he clearly fails. He demonstrates that. Then he reveals himself and exposes another weakness that he has, and that is that he doesn't focus enough on the moment, on the now, and as he says that, we see that Luke's carried away again, and we can easily relate to that whole situation and see that Yoda is right, and that Luke has something to learn from him. And he starts teaching him. This whole sequence is very emotional, very easy to relate to, and they really behave like a teacher and a student, like a master and a Padawan. And again, the training is very much about the state of the mind, the state of the spirit, not so much about the physical, certainly not about... Now we get to prequels Yoda, and I hate to say it, but he's being a total dick to little Annie. I mean, I almost feel sorry for him. He goes like this: "Hello, you 7-year-old boy who has spent his entire life as a slave with your mother as your only living relative ever, and you have just been torn apart from your home planet, from your mother, to potentially never see her again at such a fragile and young age. So tell me now, do you miss her?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, afraid to lose her, maybe? He's basically leading him to say, okay, maybe I'm afraid, and then be like, haha, that's a path to the dark side, you can't be a Jedi. It's like, give me a break, Yoda. Of course he will be thinking about his mother, of course he will be concerned, but I mean, this is going from being able to be serene and passive in order to see right from wrong, use the Force and all that, we're going to being a complete emotionless robot or something? And to top it off, he's like, you're too old. Really? Like, I think I said it already. I was 11 or 12 or something when I watched this movie for the first time. And even then, despite the fact that I was little, this boy seemed little to me. And when he said, you're too old, I'm like, are you serious? I mean, Luke is too old apparently as well, but Luke is a grown-ass man, and yeah, it's... Now, I do say I appreciate some things of the prequels. This is clearly one that I do not appreciate. I think it's a ridiculous scene. You know, I looked at it from the perspective of being a young boy at the age of 11 or 12. Now I'm looking at it as a 27-year-old man who has been a teacher, who is a father, and it makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. And then, you know, there's the whole fight scenes where he's doing all the crazy acrobatics and jumping around, and do I need to explain anything here? Well, what's the difference between levitating the ship to make a point to Luke and doing all the crazy stuff here? You might say, isn't it the same? You know, he's using the Force to lift the ship here, and he's using the Force to spin himself in the air here. Well, the thing is, the point they're trying to make in the originals is that with the Force as your ally, you can transcend your limits. You can be this little crippled creature and be a great warrior. You know, like Luke said, I'm looking for a great warrior. That's the important point. If the scene in the originals was made with the prequel mentality, what Yoda would have done is not levitate the ship out, but he would have swum next to the ship and he would have lifted it up with his little hands, put it on his back and carry it to Luke and drop it next to him and be like, see, with the Force, I'm incredibly strong. That is the difference between the two. And as the movies have a different take on the Force and lightsabers, so do they have a different take on lightsaber duels and just confrontation between Force users. In the originals, it's much more about the internal confrontation, the internal conflict, the philosophical, the metaphysical conflict, not about the skill with the lightsaber. You know, this is probably my favorite, my most iconic fight in the entire Star Wars series. Some people don't like Episode 6. I mean, sure, Ewoks, but I tend to like it. And this is my favorite part, the confrontation between Luke and Vader. You know, what they say is what drives the fight. You know, the mention of Leia and leading to Luke overpowering Vader, then the Emperor telling Luke to finish Vader, and then he's saying, no, I'm a Jedi, throwing the lightsaber. Perfectly illustrates what I'm saying. And also what Yoda meant by the real training is to face Vader. Also, by the way, the Emperor's take on lightsabers, same thing. So I hope you're getting my point on how the prequels and the originals are different. And I've been talking so much, but I feel so strongly about it. It's about the magic of the Force. It's about the inner struggle to resist the temptation of the dark side and so on. You know, when in the originals Obi-Wan and Yoda are talking about Luke and how he's not ready to face Vader, they are saying that he's not ready to resist what it means to face the dark side. They don't mean that Luke's Ataru form is not mastered enough or whatever, you know, and it's the opposite in the prequels.
Send me to kill the Emperor. I will not kill Anakin.
To fight this Lord Sidious strong enough, you are not.
He is like my brother. I cannot do it.
Twisted by the dark side, young Skywalker has become.
So in the prequels, if Obi-Wan faces the Emperor, he will lose because he's not strong enough, as in he cannot resist his Force lightning or something. But in the originals, Luke has to face both Vader and the Emperor, and they don't tell him you're not strong enough. In fact, he wins in a way, because it's about something else there. And how does all this tie in with Rey? Well, episode 7 is in that way more like the originals. And so it's not so much about how long has Kylo Ren wielded a lightsaber and how short she's been wielding it. Now yes, they're trying to establish that Kylo Ren is badly wounded. They show Chewbacca blowing up 2 stormtroopers with his weapon, same weapon that he shoots Kylo Ren before the fight. So we might assume that Kylo Ren is in pretty bad shape, to say the least. But still, what matters is, you know, the inner realization that she has the Force, that she's sure of herself, and that she's, you know, fighting for the good cause, if you will, and not so much the, you know, the lightsaber techniques and all that stuff. And so this is why I think the argument that she's overpowered is not valid, because it's not really about her physical strength and how long has she trained in Jedi class. It's the same with Luke and Vader. You know, Vader has been a Jedi/Sith warrior his entire life. He's fought, you know, countless Force users, non-Force users, wars, whatever. Luke has never fought anybody, and he beat him. It's the same thing, or a very similar thing. So that is, in as short as I could, the point about Rey. And now let's talk about Kylo Ren. Now, if you want a scary, intimidating, powerful Sith Lord, Master of the Dark Side, going to a fight with 5 Jedi Knights and wrecking them like a badass, then I can't really blame you for not liking Kylo Ren. It's perfectly fine. I would just disagree very strongly if you would go out and say that Kylo Ren is a badly written character, or that there's bad writing or no characterization in this movie. Because, at least for the boundaries of a single movie, I don't think there is a villain that has as much characterization, and very subtle at that, as Kylo Ren has in this movie. Now, the ultimate example will be comparing him to Darth Maul. You have a very distinct look, you know, one has red skin and teeth and horns and whatnot. The other has the dark cloak, the hood, the iconic mask. One has the badass double-bladed lightsaber, the other one has the rough-looking lightsaber with the crossguard. So far, so good. However, that's all Darth Maul has. That's all he is. And it works, you know, I have no issue with that. Although, Kylo Ren has so much more. Throughout the movie, you find out that pretty much every aspect of his looks has a meaning, is there for a reason, ties well with who apparently he really is. And that is so good. And it's made subtly, we're not told directly, and I suppose you could speculate, you can say that maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's not how it is, and I'm fine with that. I just like that they're making us think, that they're feeding us important information for the character in a very delicate way. We find out that he wears that cloak and that mask and uses that voice modulation, not because he's a badass Dark Lord of the Sith, but because he's the exact opposite. He's not a Sith, he's not fully immersed within the dark side, he has doubts, yet he's a Darth Vader fanboy. He wants to be like him, he wants to be intimidating, he wants to have a commanding presence, he wants to tell people things and make them do what he says, but he's not that. In front of Snoke, he's not much more important than that general guy. He's not all that powerful. He takes off his mask and he looks like a Backstreet Boy, so he doesn't have what it takes to be Darth Vader, and that's fine, right? He understands that, and that's why he wears the clothes, he wears the mask, he uses the voice modulation to try and compensate for what he's lacking. And so he's a real character. Same thing with the lightsaber. You know, the blade is not all wiggly and jiggly just to be cool. And same thing with the sound it makes. That's probably an indication that he's not very good at the art of crafting a lightsaber. And he couldn't make it very well, and the blade goes all sideways and whatnot, and makes a weird sound. And so, all of a sudden, from a guy who seems to be there just to look scary, you get deeper and deeper, and you figure out that there is a real person with issues and with uncertainties and whatnot underneath this mask and those clothes and the lightsaber, and I think that's great. I mean, you may not like it, like I said, it's up to you, it may not be your kind of thing. I won't argue if you don't like him for what he is, but I will argue strongly if you say that he has no character or that he's badly written. I think it's the exact opposite, and I really liked what they did with Kylo Ren. All that he is, all that he does, the fact that he gets all angry and loses controls and throws temper tantrums, that makes sense, because he's not in control. He tries to be, but he's not, and that's cool. That's what I like. So that was it. Tell me what you think. I'm looking forward to reading long essays about how the prequels are so much better than Episode 7, and how Rey is the worst character, and how Kylo Ren is even worse, and how Luke actually had quite a lot of training while he was with Yoda. Apparently Yoda was all jumping around with the lights. But anyway, that was it. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you soon. Until next video, stay tuned and be good.